I never thought the two people I loved most in this world would conspire to put me out like yesterday's trash, but there I was, standing in my own living room, listening to my daughter and my sister-in-law discuss my transition, as if I weren't even in the room. They didn't know I was standing in the hallway, clutching a tray of tea that was slowly shaking in my hands, as my daughter, Sarah, told her Aunt Brenda that the paperwork for the assisted living facility was almost finalized. My heart didn't just break. It felt like it was being physically crushed under the weight of their greed. Brenda, with that sharp, hungry look in her eyes, was already measuring my windows for new curtains, talking about how my 3-bedroom apartment in the city center would be the perfect place for her and her new husband to finally start their lives. I'm 64 years old, I'm healthy, and I own this home outright. Yet they were treating me like a ghost before I was even gone. Was I wrong for what I did next, or would you have fought back too? Let's go back to how this all started, because it didn't begin with a shouting match. It began with a series of small, calculated lies. My husband, David, passed away 3 years ago, leaving me this apartment. It's a beautiful place, high up with a view of the park, and it's been our family sanctuary for 30 years. After David died, Brenda, his sister, suddenly became my best friend. She was always over, bringing over-salted casseroles and checking in on me. But her eyes were always wandering over the original crown molding and the spacious kitchen. She's 10 years younger than me and has spent her life bouncing from one bad investment to another, always looking for a shortcut. Brenda had been married 3 times, each ending in a messy divorce where she walked away with less than she started with. She viewed my stability not as an achievement, but as an untapped resource. Sarah, my only daughter, had always been a sensible girl, or so I thought. She's a high-level executive at a top-tier firm, always busy, always stressed about her image and her mounting lifestyle costs. Over the last 6 months, she started making comments about the stairs being too much for me and how the city was getting dangerous for a woman living alone. I told her I was fine, that I exercised daily and had friends in the building, but she wouldn't listen. She started bringing Brenda around more often, and the two of them became an inseparable duo of concern. I noticed they started whispered conversations whenever I entered the kitchen. They began helping by moving my things around, then telling me I had misplaced them myself. It was a slow drip of poison, designed to make me doubt my own mind. One afternoon, I found a brochure for Golden Sunset Villas tucked under a stack of my magazines. When I confronted Sarah, she just sighed and said, "Mom, we're just looking at options for when you inevitably can't handle things. It's called being prepared." But I saw the way her eyes darted to Brenda. This wasn't about my safety, it was about their convenience. The tension really started to ramp up during a Sunday brunch about a month ago. Brenda mentioned, seemingly offhand, that her landlord was selling her current building and she had nowhere to go. She looked at me with those watery, fake sympathy eyes and said, "It's just so hard, isn't it, Claire? To find a place that feels like home? You're so lucky to have all this extra space you don't even use." I felt a chill then, but I brushed it off, offering to help her look for a new rental. Sarah jumped in immediately saying, "Mom, you know it's actually quite selfish to keep this big place when you struggle with the upkeep. Think about how much easier life would be in a luxury senior community. No cooking, no cleaning, just hobbies." I looked at my daughter shocked. "I clean this place myself every Saturday. I love my kitchen." I told them both quite firmly that I wasn't leaving until they carried me out in a box. They shared a look, a quick, dark glance, that I should have recognized as a warning. Over the following days, the concern morphed into something more aggressive. Sarah started calling me 5 times a day, and if I didn't answer immediately because I was at the grocery store or the cinema, she would call the building manager to do a wellness check. It was humiliating. She was building a paper trail of my unreliability. She even went as far as to tell my neighbor, Mrs. Gable, that I had been wandering the halls at night, which was a total lie. Brenda, meanwhile, started bringing over her new boyfriend, a man named Gary who looked like he'd never held a steady job in his life. They would sit on my sofa, drinking my wine, and talking about where they'd put their flat-screen TV. I felt like a tenant in my own home, a nuisance they were waiting to evict. A week later, things took a turn for the weird. I came home from my book club to find Sarah and Brenda inside my apartment. They had a locksmith there. When I asked what on earth was happening, Sarah claimed she had lost her key and decided to just have the locks changed to a more secure, smart lock system for my safety. But when I asked for the new code, she hesitated. She said she'd keep it on her phone for me so I wouldn't forget it. That was the first time I felt like a prisoner in my own home. Then the mail started disappearing. I was expecting my property tax assessment and some bank statements, but the mailbox was always empty. I caught Brenda near the mailboxes one afternoon, tucked away in the corner of the lobby, stuffing envelopes into her large designer purse. When I confronted her, she laughed it off, saying she was just helping me clear out the junk mail, so I wouldn't get overwhelmed. The gaslighting was becoming a full-time job for them. I tried to log into my bank account that evening, only to find the password had been changed. When I called the bank, they told me that my daughter, acting as my authorized representative, had updated the security protocols. I felt the walls closing in. They weren't just after the apartment anymore. They were trying to seize my entire existence. I spent that night lying awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I was actually going crazy. How could my own child do this? I had paid for her Ivy League education, helped her with the down payment on her first condo, and been there for every heartbreak. The betrayal felt like a cold blade in my back. The breaking point happened 3 days ago, the day I overheard that conversation. Sarah had invited me to dinner, but then called to say she'd be late and told me to wait for her at my place. She didn't realize I'd arrived early. Hearing them talk about the retirement home and Brenda moving in was the final straw. But I didn't burst in and scream. No, I went back to the kitchen, set the tea down, and walked out the back service entrance. I went straight to my lawyer's office, an old friend of David's. I needed to know exactly what they had done. It turns out, Sarah had been trying to file for a limited power of attorney, claiming I was showing signs of early onset dementia. She had even used some of my disoriented comments, which were actually just me being tired after a long flight, as evidence. She had also falsified a document where I supposedly requested help with my finances. They were 3 days away from a hearing that would have handed them the keys to my life. My lawyer, Robert, was livid. He told me that if we didn't act immediately, I could be moved into a facility by the weekend. We spent 6 hours that night strategizing. It wasn't just about stopping the hearing, it was about ensuring they could never attempt this again. I had to prove that I was not only sane, but that they were malicious. So that's the situation I was in. My own daughter and sister-in-law were conspiring to declare me incompetent just to steal my real estate and shove me into a facility. I had 72 hours to stop them and make sure they never forgot the day they tried to cross me. Before I tell you how I turned the tables and the absolute chaos that ensued at that hearing, I want you to pause. Think about your own family. If you found out your child was trying to take your home and your freedom, what would you do? Would you forgive them? Or would you burn the bridge? Tell me in the comments right now, because what I did next was cold. I spent the next 48 hours being the perfect, confused old lady. I let them lead me around, I pretended to forget where I put my glasses, and I even let Brenda start packing up some of my books. I wanted them to feel overconfident. I wanted them to think they had already won. I even allowed Brenda to bring over moving boxes, watching as she labeled them with Brenda's office and guest room. Every time she taped a box shut, I felt a surge of adrenaline. They were so blinded by their greed that they didn't notice the sharp clarity in my eyes when they weren't looking. Meanwhile, I was working with my lawyer to gather every piece of evidence of my sanity. I went to 3 different independent doctors and took full cognitive exams, passing all of them with flying colors. I ensured the doctors knew the context, that I was being targeted for my assets. I also installed a few hidden cameras, the kind that look like USB chargers, around the living room and kitchen. I caught Brenda on video literally dancing in my bedroom, holding up my jewelry and telling Sarah on the phone, "I'm going to sell the pearls, but I'm keeping the engagement ring. It'll pay for the honeymoon with Gary." Sarah's voice came through the speaker, clear as day. "Just make sure she signs the final papers tomorrow. Once she's in the car for the spa day, she's not coming back here. The facility is already paid for with her own savings account." Hearing Sarah talk about spending my hard-earned money to lock me away was the final nail in the coffin of our relationship. The day of the spa day arrived. Sarah showed up in her expensive car, smiling like an angel, wearing her dutiful daughter mask. She told me we were going for a day of pampering to relax my nerves. I told her, "Oh, that sounds lovely, dear, but I have a small errand to run first at the courthouse. Just a little paperwork regarding the apartment that I found in the mail." Her face went pale, a flicker of panic crossing her features before she smoothed it over. She tried to tell me it could wait, that we would miss our appointment, but I insisted, acting a bit stubborn and forgetful, to play into her narrative. When we got to the courthouse, she realized it wasn't a spa day. It was the hearing she had scheduled, but I was the one walking in with a briefcase and a lawyer. She saw Brenda waiting in the hallway, looking smug in a black dress, acting like she was at a funeral for my independence. They both thought they were there to witness my downfall. They hadn't realized I had invited a few guests. The apartment building manager, Mrs. Gable, and even Sarah's boss, who I knew valued family integrity above all else. When the judge called us in, Sarah started her prepared speech about my declining health and safety concerns. She looked so professional, so heart-wrenchingly concerned as she showed the judge the brochure for the retirement home. Then it was my turn. I didn't say a word at first. I just stood up, straight and tall, and handed the judge a tablet. On it was the video of Brenda in my bedroom, the audio of their phone calls, and the certified results of my 3 cognitive tests. I also presented the evidence of the intercepted mail and the unauthorized bank changes. I watched Sarah's face turn from fake concern to absolute, bloodless terror. Brenda started stammering, trying to say I had hacked her or that the video was AI generated or fake. The judge was a no-nonsense woman who had seen it all. She watched the video of Brenda laughing about selling my jewelry and Sarah's cold instructions to never let me come back. The silence in that courtroom was deafening. The judge looked at the evidence, then looked at Sarah and said, "This isn't a case of a declining parent. This is a case of organized elder abuse, theft, and attempted fraud." The judge didn't just dismiss their petition. She issued a permanent restraining order on my behalf and directed the court clerk to send the file directly to the district attorney's office for criminal prosecution. Sarah tried to reach out to me, crying, saying she was just trying to help, but I didn't even look at her. I walked out of that room with my head held high, leaving them to deal with the wreckage of their own making. The aftermath was glorious and devastating all at once. I changed the locks, for real this time, and I blocked both of them on everything. Sarah lost her job a month later when the news of the attempted fraud leaked out in her professional circles. Apparently, high-end firms don't like executives who try to legally kidnap their mothers. Her boss, who had seen the evidence in court, made sure she would never work in that industry again. Brenda was evicted from her apartment because she had stopped paying rent, assuming she'd be in my place by the end of the week. She tried to sue me for emotional distress, but my lawyer laughed her out of court. She's currently living in a cramped motel on the edge of town. Gary having left her the second he realized there was no money coming. As for me, I'm still in my apartment. I've started traveling, using the money I saved for retirement, to actually enjoy my life. I went to Tuscany last month, and I'm planning a trip to Japan in the spring. I realized that blood doesn't make you family. Loyalty and respect do. I've made new friends, people who value me for who I am, not for what I own. I even started a small garden on my balcony, growing the herbs I used to buy. It's a quiet life, but it's a free one. I learned a hard lesson at 64. Never let your guard down. Even with those you gave life to, greed can turn even the most sensible person into a monster. I'm at peace now, sitting on my balcony, watching the sunset over the park, knowing that my home is mine and my life is my own. I don't regret a single thing I did to protect myself. Some people think I should have been the bigger person and forgiven my daughter, but I think some actions are unforgivable. Attempting to strip someone of their dignity and their home isn't a mistake, it's a choice. If you think I was right to expose them and cut them off, hit that like button right now. Some people think I should have given Sarah a second chance, but how do you trust someone who tried to lock you in a cage? What do you think? Was I too harsh, or did they get exactly what they deserved? Subscribe to the channel for more stories of justice and family drama. And make sure to share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section below. I read every single one of them, and your support means the world to me. I'll see you all in the next story.